Welcome to How to Lose a Girl in 10 Days, the podcast where we talk about the opinions of old people and young people, from fair wages, carbon zero, sheen hauls, and everything else in between. Kia ora everybody, welcome back to How to Lose a Girl in 10 Days. I'm Holly. Unfortunately, in the midst of flu season, Zandy's away today, so you've got the luck of me being your sole host. But exciting news today, we've got on a very special guest. We have Jessica Hammond as the Deputy Co-Leader of the Opportunities Party, or probably more well known as TOP. So I'll let her introduce yourself.
Kia ora, Holly. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm Jessica Hammond. I'm top candidate for Ohariu and co-deputy leader. This is my third time standing for top, and really excited to be here and talk to you back at my old digs, Vic Uni.
Very nice, yeah. So could you give us a little bit of a background about yourself, where you're from, why you got into politics as well?
Yeah, so I'm from Wellington. I grew up here with my family. I went to Vic for too long. Studying mostly philosophy and a bit of psychology and economics.
Nice.
My day job is as a public servant. I've got 2 kids and a dog, and I've been involved in TOP since the very beginning in 2016. I suppose because I guess I'm a what you might call a justice sensitive person. Like I feel like things that can be fixed ought to be fixed, and we ought to go at them with like passion, enthusiasm, optimism, aggression if necessary.
Yeah.
And there are lots of different ways you can do that, but this is one that kind of seems to suit my particular interests and talents, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's definitely a sentiment that kind of resonates with a lot of young people these days, is like, there are so many things we identify need to be changed. Why are we not just doing those things, right? And I think it's kind of frustrating for a lot of young people to see the system not doing the things that we're asking them to do. So yeah, I think it's really interesting.
100% frustration. Like don't. Sorry, this makes me sound like an old lady. Don't lose that. I think that's a really healthy.
It's good to carry through.
Yeah, it's a healthy emotion to keep with you.
Definitely, because that's the only way you can really get change, right? Because as soon as you give up on it, everything goes. Okay, so I think the main thing. So for people who don't really know what the Opportunities Party is, or like what you guys stand for, how would you describe it in 3 words? Sorry, really putting you on the spot here.
3 words. Optimistic.
Mm-hmm.
Pragmatic.
Mm-hmm. Those are 2 good words already.
I'm really tempted to say smart, but I know we have a bit of a reputation for being like, for maybe leaning too much into that. But what I mean is we
evidence-based policy.
We believe in smarts, not necessarily that we know everything, but that there are things that are known, and we should try and find out what they are and use them.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, cool. That's good. So, kind of more of as a wider overview of what TOP stands for and what you are kind of pushing for. What do you think separates your party from the ones that we currently have, like Labour, like National, like Greens, like ACT, all of those, smaller and bigger parties? Where do you kind of sit on that spectrum, and what kind of makes you different?
Yeah, there's a few things. I mean, there's our approach to how we come up with policy. So we're very much about taking the best evidence and solutions that are from around the world and from New Zealand and applying them here. We're not. I guess we don't think of ourselves as ideological, and that's what I mean when I say pragmatic. We don't really care who the idea comes from. If it's a good idea and it's going to work, let's use it. But I think a really big thing that's different about TOP is our strategic position in within our sort of political environment. So we don't really necessarily fit nicely onto a left-right spectrum.
Yeah.
But where we would sit strategically is in the centre.
Yeah.
And that's partly because in the centre is where you have bargaining power. So, New Zealand First in 2017 was able to get, $3 billion to do whatever they liked, because they had that bargaining power and were able to be the kingmakers,
Exactly.
But also, I guess we think it's really important that New Zealand has a bit of a rudder. New Zealand First described themselves as a handbrake on Labour, or they're a handbrake on Parliament, and I guess we'd view ourselves more as like maybe a mixture of an accelerator and a rudder.
Yeah,
So,
I think handbrake is interesting terminology. Is like you're stopping progress from happening.
So
It's
it feels like a bit of a
oddly weighted.
self-own.
Yeah,
I don't really understand why you would want to be that, but what we have at the moment and what we've had for at least 30 years is this continual shuffle, a little left, shuffle a little right, but we're not going forwards. And when you don't have that kind of, I guess when actors in society and the economy, so I mean like businesses and local government and just individuals, don't have any certainty about where the country's going. They don't see a vision and a clear direction. It's really hard to invest. It's really hard to make long-term decisions when you know, okay, we're going to have 3, 6 or 9 years of all of the different agencies being amalgamated into one. And then for the next 3, 6 or 9 years, they're all going to be broken up again.
yeah,
And we're just going to be going back and forth. And especially with long-term problems like climate change, anything that involves investing in our future, we really need some clear direction and stability. And that's where I think a party in the centre can be really powerful.
Yeah. I think that I've heard you guys be described as like radical centrists, right? Which is kind of like reformist, but also in the centre. Is that something that you would probably identify with, or do you think that's mischaracterizing you a little?
I think that's fair. Like I say, we don't necessarily identify as left, right, or centre because we'll take ideas from anywhere. But I think the idea that being centrist means that you're just watering everything down is something that we would totally reject.
Okay, yeah, no, fair. That makes a lot of sense. So I think that some of your policies have kind of been coming out recently and people are kind of interested to know what they're all about. The biggest thing that I've kind of seen floating around is your Teal Card. Do you want to give a little spiel about what that's about for people who are unfamiliar with it entirely?
Yeah, so most people probably know about the Gold Card, which is a card for older people to be able to get discounts and services and things like that. So the Teal Card is like that for people under 30, but way, way better. So the benefits of the Teal Card are, so first of all, it's, I have one here if anyone's looking on the camera.
Exciting.
So you have, there's a physical card and then there's a digital app, and in theory you can put anything on it you like. But what we would start with is free public transport for under 30s, fully funded healthcare, so that's like doctor, dentist, eyes, ears, mental health, a $1,500 credit for bikes, e-bikes or micro-mobility, a $5,000 savings boost, and some kind of civic service / civics education kind of programs.
Oh, cool. I think, like, I was reading up on this, and those are all really great things, and, like, I think that everybody would love to have those things, but the practicality of that, like, I read it's going to cost you, like, about $1.5 billion a year. Don't you think, like, I think for the average person, that seems like a lot of money, right? How do you justify putting that forward for the Teal Card?
Yeah, so I mean, it's an investment, right? So anytime you make an investment, you expect to get something out of it. And what we expect, I mean, it's fully funded, and we this is a practice that we have. It's maybe another thing that's a little bit different from some other parties. Whenever we propose a policy, we say how we'll pay for it. But yeah, so we know it's affordable, but also we know that it has huge benefits. So investing in young people's health, for instance, saves us down the road.
Yeah,
So
true.
even if you were someone who was, like a cold-hearted economist, not that all economists are cold-hearted. You cut that if you like, Holly. No, but even if you were, you're an accountant, you're an actuary, you're like an insurance person, you would invest in young people if you want to get the best, if you want to do the best, just purely on the economics. You would
Right,
invest in
yeah.
young people.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose so. But then also, I think you run into this problem, and like I think that it's really good that you kind of say how all of your policies are funded, and I've kind of tracked that through, and it all seems pretty legit. But if you can get that kind of money, what would you say to people who would probably say, if you can get that money, why don't you just put that towards things like better like healthcare services, better education, because those are things that are currently suffering. If we can get more money, why don't we just put those things that can, better the whole of society, like increasing nurses' wages, teachers' wages, getting those kind of essential public services up and running?
Yeah, I mean those are all really valuable things to invest in. But I think at some point, we have to say, I guess we'd say, there are a lot of parties who are promising, I guess, tweaks or more substantial changes for the problems we have right now. But someone has to look at what kind of society we want to have in 30, 40, 50, 100 years' time.
Yeah.
So our focus is investing in young people, investing in people who haven't been born yet,
Yeah.
so that we can have a really great foundation for, a fair and awesome future for everybody.
Yeah, cool. I think that sounds good. In looking where you're funding this from, I do have a question. You're taking $200 million out of the Climate Change Emergency Relief Fund. Can you tell me a little bit about why you can justify that, given I think that a lot of people are concerned about this climate change relief, especially in the wake of Hawke's Bay, Auckland flooding, all those disasters that seem to be becoming more prominent, and possibly we need that money for those things?
Yeah. So we are very much in favour in our climate resilience focus. Our climate policy is not out yet, but you'll see a big focus on resilient climate infrastructure. So it's not at all about thinking those things are unimportant. It's just that fund is underspent, and it's right now just sitting there. So let's invest it. Yeah, we have separate policy for investing in climate infrastructure. That's really important.
Wonderful. I think that kind of leads us on to the next part about what kind of is your kind of climate change visions, given that I think that's front of mind for a lot of young people, especially when they're voting in this coming election. What are you kind of putting on the table? What things do you support? What do you not support? In that kind of realm.
So our climate policy is going to be released soon. So I can't tell you exactly what it is, but I can tell you the our approach to climate change, which is that it is, the biggest problem coming ahead of us. We need to invest massively in both mitigation and adaptation, and the mechanism by which we address emissions has to deliver actual net reductions in emissions. Gross reductions in emissions, not just offsetting or paying other countries to
reduce this for us.
Exactly. We need to, in New Zealand, actually be releasing fewer or less emissions. More to come on that. But one of the big things we're going to be looking at is the role of forestry in climate change, and how we should or should not use that.
Okay, cool.
And then on the more micro level, I suppose, things like our free public transport, the subsidy for e-bikes. Transport emissions are a really big part of our emissions profile. So there's a lot of little things we can do, but also just getting that system. And like I said earlier, having really clear signals. I mean, this is one thing that I think is really quite disastrous for our progress on climate change is even when we do have something like the emissions trading scheme, the moment the carbon price got high enough that it was starting to affect investment decisions and the decisions of businesses and government and local government around climate, Labor kind of lost their nerve,
like backtracked a little.
Yeah. And made decisions with the strategic reserve of climate of carbon credits that crashed the price of it. So they've really just undermined the system that they say that they really believe in.
That kind of comes back to what you were saying about, parties focusing on the next election and not really focusing on future goals. Like, do you think that kind of played a part in those decisions that you think is a problem?
100%.
Yeah.
And I think it's, this is where that frustration we were talking about really comes in, because it's like, it's our future. I mean, yours far more than mine. It's like, something that really frustrates me, is becoming a bit of a theme, is when politicians say, look, we're going to do this hard thing, but we can't do it until we have enough seats in Parliament. And then they do get enough seats in Parliament. They're like, we can't do it yet because then we might lose the seats we have in Parliament. It's like, when are you going to actually do it?
Yeah.
Why are you there? And it just, drives me a bit wild.
Rubs you a little bit the wrong way.
Yeah.
Fair enough. So can I ask you a question? What is your opinion on farmers? I feel like this is such a divisive thing for so many parties. Are you pro-taxing farmers? Are you anti-taxing farmers? What is the kind of vague top stance on that?
Yeah, I mean, anyone in the economy should internalize their externalities. so everyone should be paying for the pollution they're producing. They shouldn't be imposing that on anybody else. There are a lot of farmers who already take that really, really seriously. It's a little bit that thing, like the future's already here, it's just unevenly distributed, that quote. So, our general approach is, let's reward and celebrate those farmers who are already doing that, and those who aren't need to be paying the costs of the bad stuff they're doing.
Yeah, fair enough. I think that with that, if you were to, make farmers pay for those, do you think that massively has cost of living effects on New Zealanders? Like, when you increase the cost that it costs a farmer to produce, I don't know, like a litre of milk, that just inevitably increases the price for the average New Zealander who's probably already struggling? What's the kind of response there?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, we have to pay those costs one way or another anyway. We either pay them in the cost of the milk itself, or we pay them in remediating, nitrogen in the water, or we pay them in the health costs of of people getting more bowel cancer. Like, as a country, we have to pay for this stuff. Like, there's no question that we need to protect and fix our water. There's no question that we have to do what we can to mitigate and adapt to climate change. We need to protect our soil. We need to protect our biodiversity. So either way, we're going to be paying for it. The question is, what is the least cost, most effective way of getting the outcomes we want?
Yeah, fair enough. Cool. So kind of following up on, cost of living kind of issues, I know that for a lot of students and people who probably listen to this podcast, housing is definitely a massive issue, right? Like, in Wellington, house prices are ridiculous. They just keep going up, right? So what's TOP's, plan to kind of tackle those things?
Yeah, housing has been one of our biggest policy priorities since the very beginning. And we know that our housing that housing in New Zealand is like, it's a disaster socially, and it's also a disaster for our economy, because the way our system is set up, it incentivizes everybody who has any money at all to plough it into housing. So not only does that drive the cost of housing up, which leads to problems with housing affordability, it also takes money away from investment in things like businesses, in climate mitigation. It also means that people like you guys, who are presumably renters, don't have enough money to buy stuff.
Yeah.
So that hurts our businesses again, as well as hurting your standard of living.
Yeah.
So for all sorts of reasons, we need to address housing affordability. And it's actually not, we actually know how to do that. This is one of the many things that politicians know how to do, but they're not necessarily willing to do the thing that they
just like for political capital reasons.
Yeah, there have been so many tax working groups, for instance, over decades under both of the main parties, and they all recommend changes to the tax system, which at the moment massively rewards and incentivises overinvestment in housing.
Yeah.
So rebalancing the tax system is a really important priority for us, and our policy is to have a land value tax, which is a really old idea, and it works great. Basically, what it means is you tax the land under residential housing, and you'd pay the same amount of tax on a parcel of land, whether you have one big sprawling family home on it or whether you have a townhouse or an apartment building. So that incentivises density, basically.
Right.
So that incentivises supply. It deals with the problem of land banking, where people just sit on residential land that's unused or underused. So it really promotes efficient use of land, which also helps with climate change, because we have, denser living, which is more conducive to walking, cycling, public transport. So a land value tax solves a lot of problems and can also fund a lot of other cool stuff like universal basic income, for instance.
Yeah, true. I think just on that, like in the short term, I think for like as an example, my landlord owns a couple of flats like in like center of Wellington. If he just suddenly gets taxed on those and he's not really able to build more except maybe like upwards, it's not really a feasible thing for one landlord to do. What stops him from just increasing my rent because he has more tax to pay?
Yeah, I mean the evidence is that doesn't really happen. So we're not super worried about that being passed on. The evidence is just that it doesn't.
Okay.
Yeah. So and it's also just something that we have to do it. We have to at some point. And
is it kind of more like a long-term goal of eventually people will just start using this more efficiently, more effectively?
It lowers the cost of it lowers the cost of housing. So it also means that landlords aren't servicing as much in terms of their borrowing costs, because the housing becomes less expensive. So we need to rebalance this tax system. It's one of those things, like I do understand why particularly the big parties are fearful of introducing a new tax, especially because people who are wealthier and older also vote in higher numbers.
Yeah.
But at some point, if we actually want to have a functioning economy where people can be housed and can thrive, we have to do some stuff that's a little bit hard.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So as a couple of like final questions, I guess, if you were to get a seat in Parliament, because you obviously are a minor party, you haven't been in Parliament before, so it's probably more likely that you'll get one or two seats as opposed to a majority, right? I think that on that front, if you were to get a seat in Parliament, what would be your main push, like the most feasible thing that you could do, the first bill to pass in Parliament? What would it be for top?
Yeah. So first of all, we are going for like the 5%, but also Raf Manji, who's our party leader, has an excellent chance of winning Ilam in Christchurch, and on current polling we'd probably get 3, maybe 4 MPs.
Cool.
So the way the left and right blocks are so finely balanced, there's a really good chance that we could be in a position to, I guess, effectively decide who gets to form a government. So that is a really strong bargaining position.
Yeah.
So we would have to see exactly how the chips fall, but the Teal Card is a huge priority for us, and fixing the tax system to make it fairer is a huge priority for us. So I think we'd be driving for those things in particular.
Very cool. And then kind of on that, a little bit of a tricky question. I'm not sure if you can answer this, but are there any parties that you are unwilling to go into a coalition with, or if you had to pick between one side, is there a way that you would fall, or is it just kind of up in the air for you at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, our position is that we will not form a coalition at all. We'll sit on the crossbenches and support pieces of support or not pieces of legislation as they come. So we're looking more at a confidence and supply agreement, and then it's really going to depend on what is going to be in the best interests of New Zealand overall.
Fair enough.
But we haven't. There are some parties outside of Parliament that we would not work with, but there are aspects of policy that we could work with anybody on.
Cool. Yeah, very good. Awesome. So thank you so much for coming to talk to us today. Here's a little space. I think that you might have some information about how you can contact TOP, join Young TOP, those kinds of things.
Yeah. So we'd love to hear from anybody who if you just have any questions, or if you're interested maybe in getting on board, we may even still have some spots for potential candidates, and love having young people involved. So we have Vic Young Top, which you can find just searching for Vic Young Top on Facebook. Or if you get in touch with me, I'm very easy to find on social media. And we have a meetup at the Southern Cross on the 3rd of May, 6 p.m. So if you can just turn up, 3rd of May, 6 p.m. at Southern Cross and meet a bunch of us candidates and the Young Top president. And it's a really nice party to be part of. It's, we get along very well. We want the same things. A lot of very passionate, wonderful people who I adore.
Wonderful. That's really cool. Thank you so much for coming to chat to us today. Thank you for listening to the podcast, everybody. I hope that you've learned something new, learned a little bit about TOP. It's been wonderful to get some really good insights here. And we'll see you next week. Thanks,
you very much.